Hi, friends. I'm really excited to be here today with Tara, who is a cookbook author. I am going to show her covers really quick before she introduces herself because they're awesome. So this is your first one, right?
It
Live
is,
Life
yes.
Deliciously. Okay, so this is our first cookbook. And then her one that's more recent, came out a couple years ago, is Delicious Gatherings. And I was watching her Instagram this morning and I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to like stop everything and go to the store. You have like this really cool menu planner. And I thought that's so creative because I love recipes, but it would be nice just to go to the store and buy like five sets of ingredients for
Yeah.
meals and then just not have to worry about it again the rest of
Just
the week.
what you
But
need, right? Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Heather. Thanks for having me. I have been cooking my whole life and professionally for almost 30 years. So
Wow.
I have created thousands and thousands of recipes. I've worked as a magazine food editor. I worked at Martha Stewart magazine for many years and then Ladies Home Journal magazine before it closed. And I joked when I was at Ladies Home Journal that uh, everyone's grandmother read that magazine. It was one of the old classic lifestyle magazines in the country. And it was so fun to work there and at Martha Stewart and see the differences. But I was creating recipes for millions of readers every month. And I loved that. Um, and then I transitioned into food styling and recipe creation for brands and clients when I left the magazine industry. And I would just do contract work and consulting for different brands. And I would go on photo shoots and make food for the photography as a food stylist. And so I've kind of touched all the worlds
Mhm.
before I started my own blog. And now I get to write cookbooks and run my own blog. And I live in New York City, which I think is one of the greatest food cities in the world. So I'm always inspired, but that is me. And so my website, tarateaspoon.com, is now where you can find me.
It's really easy to find your Instagram and you had like this peach dessert on there.
Yes, was it
um,
the peach tarts with the
yes,
cream and the
and they're just beautiful. And peaches are just amazing. It's like peach season right now. So yeah,
exactly, they're so good. And that's a good example of sort of my recipe style. If you're curious, I love making everything from scratch. So pie dough and the cream topping and cutting up fresh peaches.
yeah,
But that recipe, I also give people the option and tell them how to use store-bought pie crust. And you can use frozen peaches. And
yeah,
so I love helping people enjoy cooking and getting in the kitchen and learning new skills. But I also realize we are all so busy. And
yeah.
sometimes we just want something yummy and fast, and we use pre prepared things. And so I love mixing both of those worlds.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's great to have options. So you said you've been cooking and doing all this stuff for like 30 years. Like, was this something that was traditional in your family?
I grew up cooking with my mom and grandmothers, of course. I was always in the kitchen
Hmm.
at their elbows, watching them, hoping to help. And they were great teachers. My mom always was teaching me and helping me cook in the kitchen. And so I formed a love for it. And so
Yeah,
from early on, I was always in there making my favorite recipes and experimenting. I was the kid with the easy bake oven, right?
yeah,
And so you'd have those little mixes, but then you could make your own stuff and cook it in the easy bake oven. Um, and when it came time to go to school and decide what I was getting an education
hmm,
in, I got great advice from my father. And he said, what you study in college and major in is what you'll go into in a career. And so you need to love it. And so
yeah,
study something you enjoy and that you love. Because he didn't want me to get stuck in a career that I wasn't going to enjoy just to make money, just to get a degree.
yeah,
And so I studied culinary arts and food service management in college, and that was my degree. And I didn't quite know what I was going to do with it.
hmm,
Um, but I knew I didn't want to work in restaurants, but I loved cooking. And so I am so lucky that my career path took me into food publishing. And so I worked in food publishing and magazines for many years. And so that was that path. into food.
So what was the inspiration that you had going from this culinary career to actually then, okay, I'm going to do this cookbook? Like, what was kind of the catalyst?
Well, I've obviously always loved cookbooks and anything published and tangible about food, magazines being included. And so it was sort of a natural progression for me. I love sharing my recipes and sharing cooking with people. And so I wanted to bring them all together in a very lasting way. And my publisher came to me at one point and said, "Hey, let's publish a cookbook." And it was funny enough, it wasn't the right time for me in my career. And it was a little overwhelming. I knew I wanted to do it someday, but it wasn't the right timing.
Yeah.
And so I put them off. And 5 years later, they came to me again and said, "Hey, do you want to do a cookbook?" And funny enough, that was the time I had really sort of created a brand for myself and my own business and consulting and freelancing outside of magazine world. And
Yeah.
so I published 2 cookbooks back to back and filled them with, like I said, it was a natural transition to sharing my recipes and then putting them in a nice published form. It was kind of just all of my passion into these books and my favorite recipes from years of creating recipes and family favorites that I updated and put twists on and things. So that's kind of what led me into that. And then 2 cookbooks back to back, and here I am, a published author. And I was like, oh my goodness, that was exciting and exhausting.
So what was like the process like? Did you already have recipes in mind because you had done so many and so you kind of already were culling your list?
Yes and no. So Heather, it was such a learning experience. I thought, oh, I've been in the publishing world for years. Writing a cookbook will be easy. I'll just put this together, done. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life and professionally.
Yeah.
Because it's different. It's different than a monthly magazine. It's different than a blog. It's different than social media. And books need to flow. They have chapters and they're permanent. It's not just a monthly magazine that somebody might put on a shelf or whatever. And so it was very hard. The process was hard to figure out what the chapters were going to be and what I wanted to share in each of them. And yes, I had a million ideas and narrowing them down to fit into those chapters, but also flow because I can't, seasonally. And I wanted a little bit that you could cook all year. So having a pumpkin recipe in there was great. But then I needed, to balance that with summer and fall and foods that you could make all year and enjoy. So it was a huge process. And also deciding what favorites and what family recipes and what recipes that I was creating new. It was a very laborious process, and I have a big wall here in my studio, and I just had Post-it notes for months and months up there, and I would move the Post-it notes around with my ideas before I even started cooking. And then cooking and testing the recipes was a big process. And then I ended up hiring a very dear friend who's a professional photographer and a crop stylist that I had worked with before. And I started to bring a team together to shoot the recipes and shoot the book because I wanted a picture for every recipe. And so that was a big project as well.
Yeah, as a cookbook reader, not writer, the photographs really make a difference because I can see, and not that it's always going to turn out exactly, with a beautiful display, but it makes me, oh yeah, that does look good. And I read the recipe. Oh yeah, I have most of those ingredients, or, there's a couple more I need to get, and it does. And so I'm sure it takes a lot more time to do that, but it's definitely appreciated.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. Exactly. But I learned from my first job at Martha Stewart magazine that I had a passion for making food look beautiful, and we eat with our eyes first.
Yeah.
And so that is such a passion of mine. And a lot of times, sure, it might be aspirational, but it's inspirational. And it's also that guide to let you know, okay, I've done this right. It looks like the picture. Or, oh, I see how she garnished that. and it looked a little bit more appetizing. But you know what? I don't have time tonight to garnish that, and it tastes great still. So it's that nice balance of here's the optimal of what you could have, but it's going to taste good no matter what.
Yeah, right. And that's what's the very most important. I remember when I was doing more research on Julia Child, and she was invited in to help with a cookbook, and that's how Mastering the Art of French Cooking came about. But her two co-authors, they were French, and Julia had learned French for the most part and had gone to a cooking school, Le Cordon Bleu, but she also wanted to make sure the recipes would turn out basically the same every time. I mean, there's always going to be a small variation, but one of her co-authors was the person that she would just, it was her family recipe, so she wasn't doing the exact same thing every time, and so they were kind of butting heads of, well, I need the exact recipe, and so that was kind of like Julia's job, is to make sure that when she was testing the recipe, that it would come out the same, every time.
Yeah, the grandmother of testing recipes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she was amazing in having that forethought and sense. I have a question for you. In writing that book and enjoying that history, did it change your cooking style or the way you approach food and
so I honestly feel like it made me want to use more vegetables, like fresh vegetables in my cooking, like how you said with your peach dessert, where you said, well, you can do the quick way or you can do the homemade way. And so I feel like I've been more drawn to doing things homemade. Like I've been making homemade salsa all summer, not from my garden, but I go pick my mom's garden. But I'd rather go do that than go buy the canned salsa. And that was Julia Child's, her big thing, because she started cooking in the mid 50s, 1950s. And in France, because it was close after the war, a lot of the stuff that was in America was canned. And in France, you go to the market every day and just buy the fresh stuff. And we don't really have that. I'm in Utah. We do have some farmers markets, but it's not part of my lifestyle, but I felt like it could be my lifestyle. And I love fresh everything. And so I think I definitely have felt inspired by her.
How fun, isn't that? And speaking of farmers markets in Utah are very different than farmers markets in another city. It's truly, they are what is grown locally and seasonally. Mm-hmm. And so, look at what Julia brought to us. She was showing us how to cook with fresh leeks. And it was 50 years later that leeks were available to everyone.
Yeah.
So it's quite a legacy. How interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. The other thing that I thought that really stuck out to me was that she she talks about the dieting culture that started really big in the 70s and into, of course, still now. But that was a struggle for her because these French recipes, they had the real butter, the real cream, all these things. And her mantra was just in moderation. If you're eating, a small dessert, or you're having your portions are a little smaller, or you're just being careful, you're only eating this certain thing a couple times a week, then it's fine. But if you're using it for every meal, then so she did get criticism for the butter in her recipes, and she would just say, just moderate it. And she was actually very fit. She was a golf player. She played tennis, and she was 6'2". But there's times when she was like, okay, I need to, eat more protein and walk more. But
yes, isn't that interesting that philosophy still stands? People are still preaching, you can eat this in moderation. It's okay. You don't have to go with the protein powders and things. Just
right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think food variety brings joy to life. So
I agree wholeheartedly.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really fun talking to you. And I'm just going to show these beautiful cookbook covers again really quick. So you have 2 cookbooks out. So, and and then on your Instagram, you have a video of you making this.
Yes, I just posted that. It's called a tarte soleil, which is French, right? So it's a sun, and it uses store-bought puff pastry. But look how elegant and amazing it looks. It's super easy. And so then you're able to learn a new skill and serve this fun, wonderful new dish.
Yeah. Well, it looks gorgeous to me.
Thanks. Thank
Like,
you.
just like you said, you eat with your eyes before you eat with your mouth and your stomach. So
For sure. For sure. Thanks for having me.
yeah, no problem. Thanks, everyone. And I hope that you try one of Tara's cookbooks because you won't regret it.
Thanks.